I never thought a secret could sit in the shadows for 12 years, and still hurt like it just happened yesterday. My hands are older now, my hair touched with silver, and my back aches in ways I never noticed when I was young. But the heart, oh, the heart remembers everything. 12 years ago, I loved a man I thought I knew completely. I gave him my trust, my laughter, my late-night whispers, and my smallest dreams. And for 12 years, I thought that trust was safe. I thought I understood him, thought I knew his every thought, his every quiet smile. But sometimes, life doesn't tell you the truth until it has you exactly where it wants you, helpless, shaking, and staring at something you never expected. His name was James. Everybody called him Jay, and for good reason. He had a way of making people feel at ease. He could make a room feel lighter just by smiling. He could make you forget a whole day of troubles with the way he laughed. And me? I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world when he asked me to marry him. We were young, maybe too young, but when you love someone with all your heart, you don't count the risks, the doubts, or the quiet little warnings your mama whispers into your ears. I loved him like a flame burning bright, and I believed he loved me the same way. We met at a friend's wedding. I remember it clearly, the way the chandeliers caught the light, the way the music felt like it carried everyone in the room into some kind of magic. He walked up to me, tall and confident, and I swear, it felt like someone had pressed pause on the world just for that moment. His smile. Lord, that smile. It made me think maybe there really was something pure in the world, something unbroken. We started seeing each other every day. Not in a grand, movie-like way, but in small moments that felt sacred. Walking to work together, sharing coffees, laughing at things that didn't matter. We shared dreams too, oh, so many dreams. We would sit on my porch in the evening, talking about the house we would buy, the little garden we would have, the children we would teach to love the world in their own way. And I believed every word he said, every promise he whispered into my ear. When he proposed, it wasn't with a diamond or a fancy ring. It was with his eyes, full of hope, full of sincerity. I don't ever want to imagine a life without you, he said. And I believed him. I said yes. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about the past or the future, I only thought about him, about us, about the way he made me feel seen in a world that so often made me feel invisible. For years, life felt simple. We built routines, small but comforting. Sunday mornings at church, evenings cooking dinner together, long talks under the streetlight near our apartment. I never once doubted him. And then, slowly, little things started to shift. Nights when he came home late, claiming work. Afternoons when he seemed distant, like a part of him was somewhere I couldn't follow. Questions I asked were met with smiles that didn't reach his eyes. And like any woman in love, I tried to ignore it. I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to hold on to the warmth that had first made me fall in love. I remember the first time I noticed the smell. I came home early one day, humming to myself, and there was something in the air, perfume that wasn't mine. My chest tightened, but I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Not even close. That night, he tried to kiss me, but I couldn't. Something in me had changed. The trust that had been steady for so long felt fragile, like glass. And I realized for the first time that the man I loved might not be the man I thought I knew. Weeks passed and the distance grew. Words became scarce. I'd ask questions and he'd respond softly, carefully, like a man avoiding something he didn't want to face. I felt my heart breaking in quiet increments, little cracks forming that I didn't dare speak aloud. And yet I stayed. I waited, hoping, believing, because love has a way of convincing you that patience will fix everything, that understanding can heal a heart that has already been hurt. Years went by. Our home became quieter, our conversations shorter. I watched him from across the room sometimes, wondering when the warmth had left. It wasn't like the world had changed, it was him, or maybe it was us, together in the same space but growing apart without realizing it. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Love could survive rough patches, right? I kept that hope alive, even when it felt like it was dying inside me. Then, one ordinary morning, everything came crashing down in a way I never could have imagined. I found a letter. A single sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges, folded neatly in his handwriting. I didn't need to read it to feel the weight of it in my chest. But I did. And every word felt like a knife cutting through the years of trust, the memories, the moments I had held close to my heart. For 12 years I've carried this, it said. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid. You deserve the truth. I hope you can forgive me one day. I didn't even need a signature. I knew. I knew what he had hidden all these years, the truth he had buried so deep he thought I'd never find it. And there it was, staring back at me like a shadow that had always been there, waiting for the right time to step into the light. I remember sitting on the couch, the letter trembling in my hands, feeling my knees weaken. The world seemed to tilt, and I was left holding nothing but the truth I had never wanted. I loved him once, with everything I had. And for 12 years, I had thought I understood him, thought I had seen everything. But no, I had only seen what he wanted me to see. I cried then. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, unstoppable tears that ran down my face and soaked into the cushion beneath me. I cried for the girl I had been, who trusted too easily, who loved too deeply. I cried for the years that had been spent believing in a version of him that never existed. And I cried for myself, for the woman who had to pick up the pieces of a life that suddenly felt unfamiliar, even though it was the same life she had been living for over a decade. When he came home that evening, I didn't speak. I didn't accuse. I didn't even look at him at first. I waited. And when our eyes met, I saw something I had never seen before: shame. Guilt. Fear. He tried to explain, to tell me it wasn't what I thought, that circumstances had forced him, that he had loved me still. But words at that point were meaningless. They were just empty air in a room heavy with truth. I remember the feeling of stepping away, of leaving the house that had once been a home filled with laughter and love, and realizing I had to live in a world that now felt foreign. I had to make peace with a love that had been built on lies. I had to forgive, not for him, but for myself. I had to learn that a heart could break and still beat, that pain could exist alongside hope. Months passed. I rebuilt slowly. I returned to work, to friends, to the small joys that had been overshadowed by years of quiet deception. I learned to breathe again, to sleep again, to let the mornings come without dread. And in time, the anger softened, the hurt became a memory that no longer cut sharp. I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because I needed peace. Life didn't end with that truth. It grew in ways I had never imagined. I met people who treated me with honesty, who valued the heart I had learned to guard carefully. I discovered strength I didn't know I had, the kind of strength that comes not from fighting the world, but from standing firm in the face of it. And most importantly, I discovered that love could come again, pure and real, if I was willing to open my heart on my own terms, not the terms of someone else's deception. Even now, 12 years later, I carry that lesson with me. The woman I once was, the one who believed everything she saw and everything she was told, is gone. In her place is someone older, yes, and scarred, yes, but stronger. Someone who knows that love isn't just about giving yourself entirely to another person. It's about valuing yourself, knowing your worth, and trusting that honesty is the only foundation on which a heart can safely rest. Sometimes, I think about James, about what could have been. But those thoughts are quiet, like whispers in a room I don't enter anymore. I don't hate him. I don't even really miss him. He was a chapter, a painful one, but a chapter that taught me more about myself than years of comfort ever could. And for that, I am quietly grateful. I have a small box where I keep the letter, folded neatly, edges yellowed with time. I don't keep it to punish him, or to remind myself of what I lost. I keep it to remember what I survived. I keep it to remind the younger version of me, the girl who trusted too easily, that even when life breaks you, you can stand again. You can love again. You can choose hope, even after the deepest hurt. And that's the truth of it, after 12 years, discovering someone's secret doesn't have to destroy you. It can teach you, guide you, and in its own painful way, set you free. I learned to live fully, to open my heart carefully, and to trust slowly. I learned that peace isn't the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. And in that acceptance, life finds its beauty again. I still think about the girl I was 12 years ago, standing in the same house, trusting a man I loved with all my heart. I want to tell her, it's okay, baby. You'll cry. You'll hurt. You'll be angry. But you'll rise. You'll find truth. You'll find peace. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that even the worst truths have a purpose. They teach you who you are, what you deserve, and how strong your heart really is. Even now, I smile when I think of that time. Not because it was easy, not because it was fair, but because I made it through. I survived love that lied. I survived pain that lasted years. I survived secrets that could have shattered me. And in surviving, I found myself. That, to me, is the real story. The story nobody tells you about heartbreak, that it doesn't have to end you. That even when a truth is discovered too late, even when love betrays, even when you're left standing alone, you can choose to grow, to heal, and to find joy again. And I did. I tell this story not because I am proud of what happened, but because I want anyone listening to know that it's possible. That pain is temporary. That time has a way of teaching you the lessons your heart couldn't learn in the moment. That sometimes the truth, even if it comes late, is the very thing that saves you from living a life in shadows. And now, when I sit in my chair, older and maybe wiser, I can look back at those 12 years and say, I discovered his truth. I discovered my strength. I discovered that life moves on, even when we think it cannot. And I survived. For years, I carried the weight of his absence like it was my own fault. I'd ask myself over and over, did I miss something? Did I overlook a sign? Every memory I had of him, every small kindness he'd shown me, I would replay in my mind like a movie on loop, searching for clues I'd never see. Friends would tell me to move on, to forget, but it wasn't that simple. You don't forget someone who once held your heart so completely, who once promised you forever in a way that made the world seem brighter. I tried to fill the void. I kept busy with work, kept my house neat, tried to laugh when the opportunity came, but the shadows always lingered. Every sound of a car pulling up to my driveway made me freeze. Every notification on my phone made my heart race, hoping for a message that never came. I didn't realize it then, but I was living in a pause, a waiting period that had no end. And in that waiting, a part of me started to shrink. I started doubting myself in quiet ways. I questioned my judgment, my worth, my capacity to know love. It wasn't until one afternoon, 12 years after he disappeared from my life without explanation, that everything changed. I was sorting through old boxes in the attic, dust coating the memories I'd tried to bury. There were photographs of us, letters I never sent, ticket stubs from movies we'd gone to together. And then, beneath the pile of old papers, I found a small envelope I didn't recognize. It was yellowed with age, the edges frayed, and my hands trembled as I held it. I knew instantly that it was from him. The handwriting was unmistakable, the slant, the loops, it was his. I hesitated, not sure if I was ready to open it. My heart thumped so loudly I was afraid it might wake the echoes of the past. But curiosity overpowered fear, and I carefully unfolded the paper. The words hit me like a wave I hadn't felt in years. They were simple, almost casual, but each line carried a weight that pulled at my chest. He wrote about choices, regrets, and confessions he had never shared. He admitted things I had never expected, things I had spent 12 years imagining but never truly knowing. I read the letter over and over, each time feeling a mixture of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. He had hidden so much, but it wasn't just secrets about other people, it was secrets about himself. The man I thought I knew, the man I trusted, the man who said he would never leave, he had lived a parallel life I had never seen. And yet, in the letter, there was a hint of remorse, a fragile, human attempt at making sense of the choices he had made. I spent that entire evening holding the letter, sitting in my living room, as the sun dipped low and painted the walls with gold. I felt an odd mixture of closure and heartbreak. It was as though the past had finally caught up with me, and I could no longer run from it. For the first time in 12 years, I allowed myself to cry freely. I let the tears fall for the girl I used to be, for the hope I had carried, and for the illusions that had kept me waiting. The next day, I started piecing things together. Memories I had filed away in corners of my mind began to connect with the confessions in that letter. Each recollection, the nights he was late, the phone calls that never happened, the distant tone when I asked questions he didn't answer, they all made sense in a painful clarity. I understood now that my heartbreak had not been a random act of cruelty, but the result of choices made quietly and deliberately. And while the knowledge stung, it also freed me in a way I had not expected. I began to see patterns I had never noticed, like the subtle shifts in his behavior that I had brushed off as fatigue or stress. The smiles that didn't quite reach his eyes, the promises that felt heavier with each passing day, the sudden disappearances that left me pacing the floor in worry, all of it had a reason, one that was spelled out in black and white on that fragile sheet of paper. And somehow, knowing the truth made the long years of confusion and grief feel less like a punishment and more like a journey I had to take to finally understand. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't send a single word in reply. The letter was not a bridge back to him, but a key to unlock my own heart. I realized that for 12 years I had been trapped in a story where I was the secondary character, waiting for someone else to resolve the plot. Now, with the truth in my hands, I could finally step into the lead role of my own life. The days that followed were strange. I felt lighter, even though the pain of betrayal still lingered. I began to smile at small things again, like the way sunlight hit the kitchen table, or how the wind played through the trees outside. I noticed colors more vividly, the warmth of morning coffee, the laughter of neighbors' children. I had spent so long expecting happiness to be tied to someone else that I forgot how to recognize it on my own. One evening, I decided to go through my old photo albums. Each page held faces frozen in time, friends, family, myself at 22 with the naive hope of forever glowing in my eyes. I lingered on a picture of him, standing next to me with that easy smile, and felt a strange tenderness. I no longer felt anger, not entirely. I felt understanding, a calm recognition that life is messy, that people are imperfect, and that sometimes the ones we love the most are also capable of choices that hurt us deeply. I began writing again, something I hadn't done in years. Letters to myself, reflections on my past, stories of what I had endured. Words poured out like water from a dam long held back. Each sentence was a step further from the pain, a stitch sewing my heart back together. I wrote about the lessons I had learned, about the strength I had gained, and about the woman I had become in the 12 years I spent waiting for him to show his true self. I also reconnected with old friends, those who had reached out during my darkest times, and those who had quietly offered support without judgment. We laughed about silly things, shared memories, and sometimes cried together. These relationships reminded me that love is not just romantic, it exists in the quiet acts of care, in companionship, in shared understanding. I had overlooked it all because I was focused on a person who had long since moved on. Then, one ordinary afternoon, I found myself walking through the park where we used to go. The bench where he had once held my hand sat empty, bathed in sunlight. I paused, thinking about all the moments we shared there, all the dreams we had whispered into the air. And for the first time, I felt a sense of completion. The chapter had ended. I had closed the book not out of bitterness, but with gratitude for the lessons it had given me. Months passed. I pursued hobbies I had abandoned, volunteered at local community events, and even started teaching classes at the community center. I found joy in small achievements, in nurturing growth in others, and in discovering my own capacity to thrive without needing validation from anyone else. I had built a life that was rich and full, despite the absence of the man who had once defined my world. Sometimes, I still think of him. Not with longing, but with a quiet reflection. I remember the laughter, the mistakes, the dreams that never came to be. And I smile, because I am no longer defined by his choices, no longer waiting for answers that might never come. I have my own answers now, found in resilience, in love for myself, and in the understanding that life continues, with or without the people we once depended on. It took 12 years to uncover the truth, but in doing so, I found something more valuable than knowledge. I found freedom. Freedom from waiting, freedom from pain that was rooted in misunderstanding, and freedom to live fully without the shadows of someone else's choices looming over me. I realized that happiness and closure are not gifts that others give, but states of being we cultivate for ourselves. Looking back, I see the girl I was, waiting anxiously for a letter, desperate for clarity, carrying hope that had been misplaced. And I see the woman I have become, steady, strong, and capable of finding peace within her own heart. The truth I discovered after 12 long years did not break me, it rebuilt me. It reminded me that even in the deepest wounds, there is a capacity for healing, for growth, and for life to become beautiful again. And so, with the letter in my hands, I finally understood that the story wasn't about him. It was about me. About survival. About resilience. About learning to trust myself again. And with that understanding, I stepped into the light of my own life, leaving the shadows behind, and finally felt the peace I had been waiting for all those years. Even after discovering the truth, life didn't instantly feel perfect. There were mornings when I'd wake up and the old ache would creep back, subtle but real, like a shadow I couldn't shake. But I learned to acknowledge it without letting it control me. I'd take a deep breath, remind myself of the life I had built, and focus on the present. I realized that healing wasn't a single moment, it was a process, a series of small steps forward. I began noticing the little joys I had missed while I was consumed by waiting. The sound of the coffee brewing in the morning, the laughter of children playing outside, the comfort of a warm blanket on a chilly night. I started to write more, filling pages with my memories, my lessons, and my thoughts. It was almost like I was having conversations with my younger self, telling her that she was stronger than she knew, that her heart would survive, that happiness was still waiting for her if she was willing to reach for it. One afternoon, while visiting the community center where I had begun volunteering, I met someone who reminded me of the good I had kept inside. He was kind, attentive, and genuinely interested in the people around him. We talked about simple things at first, the weather, the programs at the center, but there was a warmth there that made me smile. I didn't rush anything. I knew better now than to let my heart be tied to a story that wasn't fully told. I simply enjoyed the company, the conversation, and the sense of connection that came so naturally. Months passed, and I noticed a quiet transformation within myself. I had stopped looking for answers from him. I had stopped wishing for explanations or apologies. The letter had given me clarity, yes, but it had also given me something more, permission to move forward. I realized that the life I wanted didn't depend on anyone else's choices. I had my own hands, my own heart, my own strength. And that was enough. There were times when memories would surface, a song on the radio, a familiar scent, a place that once held laughter and love. But instead of letting those memories pull me backward, I let them remind me of my growth. I had survived heartbreak. I had endured confusion, sorrow, and betrayal. And I had emerged with resilience I never knew I possessed. Those memories were no longer chains, they were markers of a journey I had completed. I started to share my story, first with close friends, then with community groups, and finally, through writing. People listened and nodded, tears in their eyes, because they recognized the pain and the courage in my words. I realized that my experience was not just my own, it was something many people carried in silence. And by sharing it, I was not only freeing myself, I was giving others permission to face their own truths. Then came a quiet evening when I was alone in my home. I held the letter one last time, feeling its weight, its history, and its truth. I folded it carefully and placed it in a box with other memories I had collected over the years. I didn't need to read it again. The lessons were already etched into my heart. I had faced the past, acknowledged the pain, and embraced the freedom that came with knowing the truth. Life went on, as it always does. I continued teaching, writing, and building relationships that nourished my soul. I laughed more freely, loved more openly, and walked through the world with a confidence I had never known in my youth. The woman I had been at 22, waiting desperately for answers, would hardly recognize me now. I was whole, not because of him, but in spite of him. And sometimes, when I think back on those 12 years, I am filled not with bitterness but with gratitude. Grateful for the pain that taught me endurance. Grateful for the emptiness that taught me to cherish connection. Grateful for the truth that, while delayed, arrived just in time for me to reclaim my life. I understood finally that love isn't only about holding someone close. Sometimes it's about holding yourself close, valuing your heart, and allowing yourself the courage to start anew. I look in the mirror now and see strength in my own eyes. I see the woman who lived through heartbreak, who waited for a truth she might never have known, and who rose above it all with grace. The past is a part of me, yes, but it no longer defines me. It shaped me, strengthened me, and guided me to the life I live today, a life of peace, purpose, and genuine happiness. If I have learned anything from this journey, it's that truths may come late, and heartbreak may linger, but life always moves forward. And when you face your own truth, accept it, and let it guide you, you will find a freedom more powerful than any love you ever lost. I am living proof that the heart can heal, that the soul can recover, and that even after betrayal, sorrow, and confusion, there is always light waiting at the end of the tunnel. And so, 12 years later, I am no longer searching, no longer waiting, and no longer lost. I am here. I am strong. I am whole. And for the first time in a long time, I am truly free. Years passed, and life moved in rhythms I had never imagined in my younger days. The pain that had once consumed me became quieter over time, like a storm that leaves behind a calm, clear sky. I learned to cherish small moments, a child's laughter, the aroma of fresh coffee in the morning, the comfort of my favorite chair by the window. These were not grand gestures, not dramatic victories, but gentle reminders that life still held beauty, even after heartbreak. I found myself thinking about him less and less. Not because I had forgotten, but because I had stopped letting him live in my head. I had built a life that belonged to me alone, and it was enough. I realized that for years I had been seeking validation from someone who was never going to give it, and only by turning inward, by trusting myself, did I find the peace I had been chasing. I also discovered the power of sharing my story. People began coming to me, friends, strangers, even young women in my community, seeking advice, comfort, or just someone to listen. They would sit across from me with tear-filled eyes and trembling voices, telling me about their own struggles, their own heartbreaks, their own secrets. And I would listen. I would nod, offer a smile, and sometimes, I would share a part of my own journey. I saw in their faces the same confusion and longing I once carried. And in that moment, I understood something vital: the pain I endured was not wasted. It had become a bridge, a way to connect and help others navigate their own storms. I started volunteering more, dedicating time to mentoring young women, helping them understand the value of self-respect, self-love, and patience. I told them stories, some happy, some sad, some heartbreakingly true, about the choices we make, the people we meet, and the truths we must face. And with each story, I felt lighter. The weight of my past seemed to lessen when it was used to guide and inspire others. There were nights, of course, when memories crept in uninvited. The echo of his laughter, the sound of the letters being read, the weight of my disappointment, they would return in quiet moments. But now, instead of panic or despair, I greeted them with a gentle awareness. I would let the memory exist, acknowledge it, and then release it. It was no longer a chain holding me down. It was simply a part of the tapestry of my life, threads of pain and beauty woven together. I also found joy in teaching more deeply than I ever had before. Watching children learn, laugh, and grow reminded me of resilience and innocence. Their curiosity, their trust, and their small acts of kindness became lessons for me as much as I was lessons for them. I realized that love isn't always about romance. Love can be patience, compassion, guidance, and connection. It can be the simple act of showing up every day and caring, even when the world doesn't notice. In time, I noticed that I had changed not just on the surface but deep inside. My heart had become quieter, yes, but also stronger. I had learned that I didn't need anyone to validate my worth or make me feel complete. I was whole on my own. And the freedom that came with that understanding was unlike anything I had felt before. Occasionally, I would think of him, the man who had once held my heart, the man whose lies and absence had left me empty. But even those thoughts were tempered with clarity. I did not hate him. I did not mourn him anymore. I merely acknowledged that our paths had crossed for a reason, and that the lessons I learned from him were mine to keep. It was strange, the way someone could hurt you so deeply, yet leave you with gifts that no one else could give. Patience. Strength. Clarity. Self-love. By the time I was in my late 50s, I had built a life I could be proud of. I had friendships that were genuine, work that gave me purpose, and a heart that was open again, not to dependency, but to connection. I had learned to live fully without clinging to the past. And when I looked back, I didn't see the pain as a curse, but as a necessary path to becoming the woman I was meant to be. There were days of quiet reflection, sitting on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun melt into the horizon. On those evenings, I thought about the young woman I had been at 22, full of hope, love, and trust, and I whispered to her across time, "You made it. You survived. You learned. And one day, you will smile again, stronger than you ever imagined." It was in these moments that I understood the greatest truth of all: life may break you, it may betray you, and it may leave you wondering if love is worth the risk. But it also teaches you how to endure, how to forgive, how to heal, and how to create joy from sorrow. The heart, when tended with patience and care, is remarkable. It learns, adapts, and eventually, it loves again, perhaps in ways quieter, gentler, and infinitely wiser than before. And so, the years rolled on. I became someone who had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and truth, and had emerged whole. I had discovered that love wasn't something I had lost, it was something I had cultivated within myself. That discovery, I realized, was far more powerful than any romance or any validation I had ever sought from another person. Now, when I share my story, I do so with a calm heart. I speak not to evoke pity, but to offer hope. I speak not to relive the pain, but to honor the lessons. And I hope that anyone listening, anyone who has been betrayed, heartbroken, or left in the dark, hears this: you can survive. You can heal. You can reclaim your life. You can find joy again. And when you do, it is yours entirely, completely, and beautifully. Because the truth, the whole truth, is that even after 12 years of deception, confusion, and silence, I found my freedom. I found my peace. And I found my strength. And now, as I sit in this old chair, the afternoon sunlight spilling across the floor, I think about everything that happened, the love, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the years it took to find myself again. I am no longer that young woman who waited by the door, full of hope and naivety. I am older, yes, but I am stronger, wiser, and whole. I have learned that life will sometimes break you, that people will sometimes fail you, and that love isn't always what we imagine it to be. But I have also learned that strength, resilience, and self-love are gifts that come from surviving those very moments. The heart can heal. The spirit can rise. And the soul can find peace, even after it has been shattered. I look back at the 22-year-old me and smile softly. I would tell her, it's going to hurt, and it will feel endless. But one day, you will stand tall again. One day, your heart will be full, not of someone else's promises, but of your own strength. One day, you will find love again, yes, but first, you will learn to love yourself in a way that no one can take away. I am grateful for the pain, because without it, I would not have discovered who I truly am. I would not have learned that real love is patient, quiet, and steady, and sometimes, it comes from within. And so I smile, not because I forget, not because the past doesn't hurt, but because I have survived it. I have grown. I have loved. And I have learned that every heartbreak, every betrayal, every tear has shaped me into the woman I am today, a woman who knows her worth, who knows her strength, and who knows that even after the darkest storms, the sun will rise again. Because that, my dear, is life. Painful, messy, beautiful. And entirely, utterly worth it.